Hey y'all, and welcome to PolitiBrawl. My name is Brian, and Scott Jennings hits the nail on the head when it comes to the rise of our political rhetoric and political violence, and even the co-host still doesn't understand that her words have consequences. Let's dive in.
People come along to lecture conservatives about toning down the rhetoric and this and that, whether it happens on the left or whether it happens on the right, and no matter who the victims are, somehow we're always told that it's conservatives who are the problem and that they need to tone down the rhetoric. Meanwhile, you have people like Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut, who the day before Charlie was shot, in an interview said that we're at war and you have to be able to do whatever you need to do to win the war. You had Tim Walz the other day telling a crowd that he was hoping to wake up one day to news that Donald Trump had died. You had Seth Moulton, a congressman from Massachusetts, on TV this morning lecturing conservatives that they're the real problem. Now, it's our friend that's dead. There's a lot of causes on the left right now that are causing people to engage.
Okay, and equally
at a minimum,
on the
rhetoric.
right as well, though, Scott. Equally on the right as well. Can we at least
Listen,
be fair about this?
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I have no time and no quarter for any criticisms of Republicans or conservatives or Donald Trump or Charlie Kirk or any other both sidesing this. It's our friend who's dead, shot in the throat while doing what we're supposed to do as Americans, which is engage in civil discourse. He goes to a college, colleges are not known as hotbeds of conservatism. He goes to a college to engage in civil discourse, and now he's dead because that's what he did. So I really don't have any time for both sidesing this today. It's our friend that's dead because he was doing what you're supposed to do as an American. Talk, use your voice, use your words, use your powers of reasoning, debate, speech. That's what we do as Americans. And now our friend's dead, and you want to lecture me about Donald Trump or
I'm not
conservatives
lecturing
or
you.
both
I guess
sides?
I'm just saying.
It tells me you don't really get what's happening, and
well,
so
no,
I'm happy to explain it to you, but you clearly don't get
I
it.
am, Scott, seeking to understand how, if this is not a time for rhetoric, if it is a time to remember your friend who he's been assassinated. There is no words to express how awful that act was and is. No words. And if this is a time for respectful discourse, why is a Fox News anchor saying this is war? Why is Steve Bannon saying Kirk is a casualty of war?
That's the way it feels. It feels like that on the left right now, there is increasing amount of violent rhetoric. There is an increasing amount of people who have decided that debate and politics are useless and that they need to take it to another level. That's the way it feels to conservatives. And do you know why it feels that way? Because our friend was shot in the throat and murdered in cold blood. That's why it feels that way. Because our president last summer was nearly assassinated.
Scott, I don't think you can explain it any better than you just did. They will never understand this, particularly if you work for a place like the Times Radio, which is out in the UK. It's actually owned by Rupert Murdoch, if that name sounds familiar. He's the same guy that owns Fox News. But because England has been so derangedly leftist for the past 40 years, arguably since the end of World War II, and there's a reason that Churchill got kicked out of office because the conservatives weren't paying attention, and they needed to give something back to the British people in order to justify the horrors that they went through during the London Blitz. So when you have been in that much of a leftist space for so long, anytime someone is correcting you, you're not going to understand it. Whenever someone comes for the idea that, hey, you might be wrong, you're going to get kind of a little defensive here. And then to make matters worse, this lady moves the goalpost twice. She goes from, well, you need to tone down the rhetoric on your side too. You've got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. Lady, have you been to Reddit? Have you been to Tumblr? Have you been to what Twitter used to be? Have you been to Blue Sky? Even on Facebook, the amount of giddy joy people have derived from this assassination is absolutely mind-boggling. Mainly because Charlie Kirk owned no official title. He was not in any office. All this dude did was create his own sort of parallel empire to the Republican Party with Turning Point USA, and then use that to go to college campuses and say, hey, I think you've been brainwashed, let's have a debate. And then, after saying, well, you need to tone down the rhetoric on your side, she then goes to the next topic. Well, We need to be reflective. We need to obviously all tone down the rhetoric and just be thankful for the life of Charlie Kirk. Are you insane? You have to be insane if that is a conclusion you are going to reach with your own platform. That tells me you have been in such a leftist echo chamber that there's no hope for you ever leaving it, all right? This is Plato's allegory of the cave right here, showing before our eyes. And you know what? I need to set the stage for something even crazier. The reason this hurts more than anything else, because let's start off with the attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, where a young deranged man with weird ties to the CIA and the nation of Ukraine decided to climb up on a roof in a blind spot and take a shot at the president. He barely missed. Then, another attempt was made where a man was able to cross the wire at a Mar-a-Lago resort at a blind spot. Fortunately, got caught before Trump rounded the turn onto the next hole. And this dude wants to challenge Donald Trump to a one-on-one duel or something along those lines. I know that this guy's defense has been absolutely insane. And guess what? He has similar ties to the CIA and the nation of Ukraine in the same way of the Butler, Pennsylvania attempt of that dude. Crooks, I believe his name was. That is a weird thing to... That is just a weird combination there. And then a couple of months ago, there was an attempt, unfortunately successful attempt, on a Democrat state representative in Minnesota. And the dude that went on that crime spree had these weird ties to Tim Walz. No one still understands this dude's manifesto. It made no sense. It was all over the place. This was a dude I think who had effectively lost his mind. He had been all over the place politically. And then you had just a few weeks ago, a whole bunch of people celebrating the very idea that Donald Trump was in poor health and might secretly have passed away. There were people cheering for this. And then a few days later, trust me, I'm about to get to Charlie. A few days later, we all start seeing the camera footage of the Ukrainian woman who was slaughtered on a train because she was white. No, that's why. And this was a woman who was big into the BLM movement. She had bought into it fully. She was a Ukrainian refugee, and I feel a little bit of responsibility for that because it was my government, even though I didn't vote for it. It was my government that twice toppled the Ukrainian regime and then moved it into the U.S. sphere and just kept on poking Russia. And then when Russia finally responds, we didn't do it. I feel a little responsible for that. And then finally, after the mainstream media finally has to admit that this was indeed a huge story, they spun it. They spun it as a story of right-wingers secretly talking about nationalism, secretly talking about how there's a race war. A woman died because a deranged man decided, yeah, I'm just going to do this. No reason, just stab, stab, stab. And then in order to hide the blood, the dude took his hoodie off and wrapped up the knife because there was a blood trail right at his feet, dripping from the knife. And no one could help her. And everyone was afraid to help her. We saw what happened with Daniel Penny. So you put all of these historical moments into one single narrative, and it leads up to Charlie Kirk being shot through the throat while he was trying to debate with people who disagreed with him. And then in the footage, we see people celebrating. We have a mental health crisis here in this nation. We have a media crisis in this nation. And now we have a rhetoric crisis. Scott Jennings said it best when calling out other politicians who basically escalated their rhetoric. Tim Walz has done it. A couple of senators have done it. And now I think they've pulled the slingshot too far back, and there's no way to let this go without some sort of damage. This is a crazy timeline that we're living in. I hope things de-escalate, but remember the people who are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. And remember the people who are trying to downplay it. Remember that at the ballot box. And maybe remember that at Thanksgiving. But that's what I think. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. My name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on PolitiBrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.